Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and living where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about how the church will resurrect itself. Now, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio, et nunc et semper, et saecula saeculorum. Amen. Now, what do I mean it's going to resurrect itself? Clearly, the Catholic Church exists today, despite what the set of canonists will say. Christ promised the gates of hell would never prevail over it. Christ also ensured and promised that the church should be one. He said it in John 17. So, though, of course, he has full omniscience, knew that the church would break off into several denominations. That was not necessarily his intent, but he gifted us with free will, and they don't intervene, or God doesn't intervene with our free will and our choices that people make. So what do I mean by the church will resurrect itself? I think you can certainly look at the last 70 years, and look, even before the time of Vatican Council II, a lot of people think the church was in this great golden halcyon period up to 1962, and then it all went to crap with the decrease in vocations and the decrease of sacraments, and then the horrible Novus Ordo revolution, the bad music, and just all these things that we have been living with in the generation of Francis. And what's the generation of Francis? If you look at Pope Francis, he was a teenager during Vatican Council II, so he was kind of imbued with some of those changes. And as that generation gets older, they were definitely in the positions of power, both clerically and in your local parish, certainly during the 70s, 80s, 90s, early noughts, and whatnot, but they're all dying off. So the church has always existed. So what do I mean by the church will resurrect itself? The spirit of Vatican II is dying as those people die off. And as you see how the church has definitely struggled in this world of postmodernism, secularism, materialism, the rise of the nones, the non-affiliateds, not just in the Catholic Church, but in all organized religion. We've seen kind of this scorch and burn Catholic Church, especially in the West. You don't really see it in Africa and Asia. It's been growing there, but we're talking about the United States and Canada. It's definitely left its mark. And for every 100 converts we get, we lose 800 Catholics. Now, when you look at that number, though, understand that number is the 800 we lose as a whole are older people. And the ones we gain are, as a whole, younger people and well-educated people who've read the Apostolic Fathers and the Patristic Fathers, and they realize that the early church was in fact Catholic. But no one can deny, unless you've lived in a trad Cath bubble, whether in the ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter or a Latin Mass, TLM, Institute of Christ the King, someplace like that the church has had some tough times in the last 50 years. But the church is resurrecting itself. And you can look at the numbers. The old people are dying off. The younger generations, even myself, a Gen Xer, I'm 51, that generation who persevered through those times with the clown masses, the mariachi masses, the matches in the ocean, using a surfboard as an altar, all these things, we persevered through it. And the younger generations, I should say, the Gen Zers, if you look at the studies, even in areas of the world where the church has suffered big time, let's say Europe, if you look at the trends, there's actually a rise in religious interest, religious affiliation in England and in France and in Western Europe, which we've seen just fall apart the last 70 years, where it's truly mission territory now at this point. It's like how Ireland had to go and re-evangelize England after England had originally, via St. Patrick and his successors, evangelized Ireland. So we're at that point. But if you look at the studies coming out, among the younger 20-somethings, there has been a rise in religion. And a lot of that rise is, not surprisingly, to traditional Catholicism. So you see that rising from the embers. You look at the seminaries. The seminaries for several decades were a hotbed of not just change agent modernism, but sadly, overt homosexuality. And we've talked about here before, the sex abuse scandal was largely a homosexual crisis, homosexual infiltration of the clergy. But you can't talk about that in today's world. But as that generation is dying out, and as the seminaries as a whole are becoming more orthodox and creating more orthodox priests, the younger priests themselves are on fire with the faith. Do you look just anecdotally here in Texas? Probably the group, the demo that's most on fire for traditional Christianity are the 20-somethings. I see so many young families, girls, women that are 30 years old and have 3-4 kids that are wearing chapel veils. And again, these are outward signs. It doesn't mean that their interior life is perfect. But you would not have seen this in my 20s. Certainly you would not have seen this. So you look around, you look at Africa, you look at Asia, humongous growths in Catholicism, Christianity in general, but Catholicism. Even Latin America, sadly, Brazil now is almost to the point where Catholicism is no longer going to be the predominant Christian religion. Pentecostalism has grown so much over there. But you look at these areas, especially Africa, the southern hemisphere, let's say, it's going to keep the more modern Western part of the church alive with sending these priests, Nigerian priests, Vietnamese priests, Philippine priests. And they're going to evangelize the West. And I think if you look at the remnant, and remember what Pope Benedict said, the church would be cold into a small group, but it would be a leaner group. As you see where the pendulum is swinging, and it might be hard for you to see it if you go to Our Lady of Suburbia Parish, but the pendulum is swinging. And the church will be stronger, younger, more vibrant, and more alive with the faith in 10 to 15 years. It might be hard to see it, and I could be completely wrong in all humility. But I think the church is resurrecting itself, especially in the West, with the help of the South. And I really do think you're going to see a time of growth and a time of a reversion to traditional Catholicism. And sadly, we don't want people leaving the faith like Pope Benedict predicted. But ultimately, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, God gave us free will. God gave us the choice to leave. But I think as a whole, the church, it's going to do better. Guys, post in the comments if you agree or disagree. Until next time, take care and God bless.